Today, we're really moving past the usual headlines.
Oh,
We're
right.
diving deep into something quite different. A stunningly detailed and genuinely optimistic blueprint for restructuring society globally.
That's right. And our mission today isn't just about pointing out problems like wealth concentration, though we'll touch on that. It's really about exploring this radical, progressive vision.
Exactly. A comprehensive roadmap for establishing what the source material calls economic democracy. And it aims for, get this, 100% employment, real self-reliance, and interestingly, genuine mental and spiritual upliftment for everyone.
It feels incredibly urgent, too, doesn't it? Because the problems we're facing, they're deep, they're structural, they're not just superficial issues you can tweak away. So we have to start by acknowledging the massive economic distortion right at the heart of our current system. That extreme concentration of wealth and power, it really does cripple development, especially in, large parts of the world.
And the numbers, when you look at them, they're just impossible to ignore, aren't they?
Yeah.
The source material focuses on some large developing nations, and the data point it uses is staggering.
Yeah.
Think about this. In a country like India, just 1% of the capitalists hold around 44% of the entire country's wealth.
44%.
Nearly half. Controlled by such a tiny fraction,
Uh-huh.
it's hard to even wrap your head around that level of imbalance.
It really is. And that kind of concentration, it's like the perfect breeding ground for, all sorts of issues, frauds, certainly pervasive economic exploitation, social inequality.
Right.
But the sources highlight something even more maybe insidious.
Yeah.
It's how this inequality actively suppresses dissent. It silences people.
How so?
Well, the blueprint calls it a sense of inferiority and fear. If you feel economically insecure, if you feel, lesser than, you actually lose the moral strength, the courage to question the system.
So it keeps people passive.
Exactly. People become inactive and the status quo just stays entrenched. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Okay, so this is where the critique gets really fundamental, isn't it? The sources argue that our standard political democracy, the kind that gives us the right to vote political equality, that system has often, and this is a direct quote, snatched away the right to economic equality.
That's a powerful claim.
It is. And you see the evidence, right? Many countries today have robust political democracies on paper, but they're still struggling with chronic unemployment, mass poverty, deep-seated corruption.
So the argument is that the system itself, even with voting rights, ends up being a kind of sophisticated exploitation.
Precisely. It raises that essential question. Can you really have genuine political freedom if you don't have economic freedom alongside it?
And the proposed alternative here isn't just, tinkering around the edges. It's a complete systemic pivot, a shift towards what's termed economic democracy.
Or a decentralized economy.
Right. Presented as the real path away from capitalism and its tendency towards centralization. It promises liberation, universal welfare, but crucially, managed autonomously by local people.
So it changes the core motive, doesn't it? Away from profit towards collective necessity.
That's the idea. Meeting needs, not just maximizing returns for a few.
Okay, so let's unpack this roadmap. Our mission here is to really reveal the specifics. How does this system actually propose to guarantee 100% local employment, achieve genuine regional self-reliance, and, this is key, ensure the intellectual and spiritual upliftment of the whole community?
It's not just theory. As you said, it's presented as a design specification, a practical plan.
All right, so laying the foundation. To build this alternative, we need these non-negotiable guarantees, right? The things that define economic democracy.
Exactly. The source outlines 4 core pillars. Think of them as constitutional rights that ensure human dignity isn't, optional or conditional. It's built in.
Okay, pillar number 1, let's start there. Guaranteeing the minimum necessities of life for every single individual.
And the scope here is really comprehensive, isn't it?
It seems so. Food, clothing, housing, medical care, education, transportation, energy, and interestingly, irrigation water.
Yeah, the inclusion of irrigation water is quite telling. It speaks volumes about the priority given to self-reliance and making sure the agricultural base is strong and secure.
So these aren't just aspirations.
No, the sources are clear. These basic necessities must be guaranteed as fundamental human rights, actually backed by constitutional law.
Wow. So people would have legal recourse if the state or the local economic unit failed to provide that minimum standard.
That's the implication. It fundamentally shifts the burden. Welfare isn't charity anymore. It's an enforceable right. It puts the onus on the system to deliver.
Okay, but, providing a minimum. That's essential, obviously. But isn't there a risk of just locking people into subsistence living? How does the system prevent stagnation?
Ah, excellent point. And that leads us straight to the second pillar, which is incredibly progressive, I think. It's the continuous guarantee of increasing purchasing power for every individual.
Increasing purchasing power. So it's dynamic.
Exactly. It's not static. It means that as the local economy develops, as technology advances, as productivity goes up, all those benefits must flow directly back to the workers, to the people.
So wages wouldn't just be fixed at a minimum level.
No, they have to increase in line with the evolving standard of living. This ensures society is genuinely progressive, right?
Yeah.
It ensures that technology actually liberates human labor, makes life better, instead of just replacing people and concentrating wealth further.
So we're basically changing the main metric of success, moving away from just looking at, say, national GDP growth,
Right?
to focusing on how quickly the individual citizen's capacity to live well, to purchase what they need and want, is improving.
Precisely. It's a very people-centric measure.
Okay, so that's minimum necessities guaranteed and continuously increasing purchasing power. The third and fourth pillars seem to be about control, about where the power lies.
Yes, absolutely. The focus shifts entirely to local empowerment here. Pillar 3 mandates that economic decision-making power must be strictly, and the source uses that word, strictly, held by local people.
The people actually doing the producing and consuming in that area.
The very same. And Pillar 4 is like the defense mechanism for that local control. It demands the strict prevention of external or outsider interference in the local economy.
Okay, external interference.
Yeah.
How does the source define that? Why is blocking it considered so crucial?
Well, think about it this way. External interference means capital or corporations from outside that specific socioeconomic area dictating what gets produced locally, how resources are used, what the labor conditions are.
Right, like a big multinational setting up shop.
Exactly, or even just wealthy investors from elsewhere buying up local assets. If they can come in, exploit local resources or labor purely for profit, and then crucially extract that wealth out of the local area.
The local economy gets drained. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it, isn't it?
That's a great analogy. The wealth just drains away. So preventing this interference, maybe through things like localized banking systems, controls on outside ownership, cooperative structures, it ensures that the profits generated locally get continuously reinvested locally.
And that reinvestment then fuels that guaranteed increase in purchasing power we just talked about.
Yeah.
It all links together.
It's designed as a self-reinforcing cycle of local prosperity.
You know, what I find really fascinating and quite forward-thinking is the universal scope attributed to this ideology. The sources emphasize it's not just for human society, it's essential for the universal welfare of the entire living world.
Yeah.
That includes plants, animals, aiming for environmental balance.
Yes, this is where the economic philosophy explicitly merges with ecology. It's quite profound.
How does that work in practice?
Well, the argument is that a truly decentralized, self-reliant economy, one focused on meeting local needs rather than, endless global consumption and shipping things halfway across the world, it almost automatically enforces responsible resource management.
Because the people managing the resources are the ones directly affected by their depletion.
Exactly. The economy becomes inherently more ecological because there's a direct feedback loop. The people making decisions about the local forest or the local water source are the same people who rely on that forest or water source for their long-term survival and well-being. There's a built-in incentive for sustainability.
That makes intuitive sense. And while this whole vision feels quite revolutionary, maybe even utopian to some, the source material tries to ground it by pointing to historical context. It brings up the example of India once being called the golden sparrow.
Ah, the Sona Kichidiya. It's such a powerful analogy, isn't it? And it wasn't really about hordes of literal gold, as the source explains.
Right, it was more descriptive of the society.
Yes, it signified a healthy, an appropriate balance, a balance between a really flourishing, advanced agricultural base and, alongside it, robust, decentralized, localized industries.
The self-sustaining system.
Precisely. It created prosperity that stayed within the communities. But, as the sources detailed, that balance was deliberately broken. Historical factors, like the imposition of foreign colonial economic policies.
The East India Company gets mentioned specifically.
Yes, entities like that prioritized resource extraction over local development. Their goal wasn't to maintain that balance, it was to take wealth out. So understanding that this kind of balanced prosperity did exist, even if long ago, it sort of validates the modern push to reestablish something similar. It shows it's not just a fantasy.
Okay, so if we want to get back towards that kind of equilibrium, especially looking at the structural problems in many developing economies today, the sources identify two fundamental economic problems that need tackling simultaneously.
Yes, two core challenges. First, you need to develop the agricultural potential, make farming more efficient, more productive, but at the same time, you need to reduce the population that's excessively dependent on it.
Because if too many people are trying to live off tiny plots of land, productivity drops and poverty just persists. Sure.
Exactly. It leads to underemployment and inefficiency. So that's the first problem. The second, which is the flip side of the coin, is the need for rapid development of localized industries.
To absorb the people moving out of direct agriculture.
Precisely. To provide productive, dignified work for that surplus agricultural population. And the key is these two things have to happen together, in tandem. You can't just focus on one. It needs a coordinated push on both fronts, making agriculture more efficient and building local industries to create diverse jobs.
Okay, this is where the roadmap gets, well, really specific, almost mathematically precise. We're moving from the philosophical why to the practical how.
Right. The goal is this healthy, self-reliant local economy that can actually guarantee 100% employment. And it does this by achieving a very specific ratio of people working in different sectors.
Which is a sharp contrast to the current situation in many places where, as you mentioned, agricultural dependence might be incredibly high, 70%, maybe even 75% in some areas.
Yeah, and that kind of heavy dependence is often a sign of structural stagnation. So this blueprint proposes a balanced ratio, specifically designed to optimize how capital flows, boost productivity, and make sure there's enough local consumption to keep the engine running.
All right, let's break down this ideal 100% employment model. What does the ratio look like for a given socioeconomic unit, a local area?
Okay, so according to the plan, you need 40%. 40% of the local population engaged directly in agricultural work. This is seen as the efficient core principal industry base.
40%.
And 20% working in what are called agro-based industries. So think processing plants, refinement facilities, things directly connected to the farm output, turning the raw materials into usable goods.
Got it. Agriculture, then the first level of processing. That's 60% so far.
Correct. Next, another 20%. 20% in agro-co industries. These are the supporting industries, things like manufacturing tools for farming or the agro-industries, maintaining irrigation systems, maybe specialized local construction needed for these facilities, supplying necessary inputs like organic fertilizers or seeds.
Okay, so the support network for the first two, now we're at 80%. Where do the rest fit in?
The next 10% are the white-collar workers, your essential professionals. Teachers, doctors, lawyers, local administrators, engineers, maybe police, the people providing essential services.
Right, the service sector backbone. That's 90%.
And the final 10% is allocated to the trader class. These are the people managing local distribution, running the shops, facilitating commerce within the local market, keeping it vibrant, and ensuring goods move around efficiently.
40, 20, 20, 10, 10. That adds up to 100%.
Exactly. A balanced, diversified local economy.
Let's just pause on that for a second and maybe use an analogy. Imagine, say, a local community of 100,000 people aiming for this self-reliance under this ratio. Only 40,000 are directly farming, which might seem low compared to some traditional economies. But then you have another 40,000 people, the 20% in agro-based and 20% in agro-co-industries, working in local factories and workshops, directly supported by and supporting that agriculture.
That's a massive shift, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Think about the capital retention. Compared to a situation where maybe 70,000 were struggling on the land and most industrial goods were imported, here, 80% of the workforce is directly involved in producing and processing local resources.
And that 40-40 split between primary agriculture and related industry fundamentally changes the whole social and economic dynamic. It massively increases the purchasing power across the entire community because more people have industrial level wages. It guarantees diverse types of employment. Not everyone has to be a farmer. And it builds the local infrastructure needed for genuine self-reliance.
But you said earlier this balance is fragile. It needs protection, right?
Yeah.
Especially from that external interference.
Absolutely crucial. You can generate all this local wealth, but if it can just be sucked out by outside forces, the system collapses.
So to protect this locally generated wealth, to stop the drain, the source proposes something. Well, it sounds pretty seismic. It calls for the immediate closure of the national stock market, share market, in every country.
Yes, it's definitely a radical proposal, no doubt about it, but within the logic of this specific framework, it's presented as a necessary step.
Why? What's the core reasoning?
If the primary objective is to stop wealth from being drained out of local economies and to prevent external entities from controlling local production, well, the stock market is seen as the main engine facilitating exactly that kind of extraction today.
Because capital can just flow anywhere, instantly.
Precisely. Speculative capital jumps across borders in milliseconds. External investors, who might have no connection to the local community or its well-being, can buy shares in local industries, exert control over production decisions purely for profit maximization, and then skim those profits off the top, pulling the wealth away from where it was generated. The stock market enables that rapid, detached form of exploitation.
Okay, but hang on. If you shut down the national stock market, the immediate question is, where does the capital come from for large-scale development? Doesn't investment, especially for big infrastructure projects or developing new technologies locally, rely heavily on that kind of financial market?
That's the standard objection, and it's a fair question based on the current system. The blueprint addresses this by proposing alternative mechanisms for capital generation that are internal to the system, not reliant on external speculation.
Such as?
Capital for development would need to be sourced primarily through things like cooperative banks owned and managed locally, government bonds held by local citizens and institutions, and crucially, through the systematic reinvestment of profits generated by the cooperative and government-owned industries within the system. Also, there's a proposed production tax we'll get to later, which could also fund development.
So the idea is to replace speculative mobile capital with committed localized capital.
Exactly. Capital must serve local production and welfare needs, not the pursuit of the highest possible speculative return anywhere in the world. Closing the stock market, in this view, isn't about destroying capital. It's about redirecting it and retaining the wealth it generates within the community. It's fundamentally a wealth retention strategy.
Okay. That requires a very different industrial structure then. Highly decentralized, managed carefully to prevent new forms of concentration.
Yes, absolutely. The plan mandates decentralizing industries as much as possible, ensuring that economic conditions improve across all districts, not just in a few big cities or industrial hubs. And it proposes managing industries in 3 distinct tiers to achieve this balanced growth.
3 tiers. Small, large-scale, and key industries.
Correct. Each with a different management structure designed to maximize local benefit and prevent monopolies.
Okay, let's break down the management. How are the key industries handled?
Key industries are defined as those that are inherently complex, vast, maybe require significant initial centralization due to technology or scale. The source gives examples like, say, steel production or the initial large-scale textile spinning phase. These essential foundational industries would be managed by the current central or perhaps regional government.
So acknowledging that some things need economies of scale.
Yes, it acknowledges that need for scale in certain strategic foundational areas, but the control stays public, not private.
Okay. What about the industries closest to the people, those small industries?
These must, according to the blueprint, run on a cooperative basis, owned and managed directly by the workers and the local consumers themselves. It's the default model for smaller enterprises.
And private enterprise, is there any room for it?
Only if, and the source emphasizes this as an exception, only if cooperation is genuinely infeasible for some very specific reason. In that case, limited private enterprise might be allowed, but it must remain small scale to prevent any individual or small group accumulating undue economic power. The priority is the cooperative model.
Got it. So cooperative first.
Yeah.
And the middle ground. The large industries, those bigger than a small cooperative, but maybe not key national infrastructure.
These major production centers, which might exceed the capacity of a purely local cooperative but aren't strategic key industries, would be owned by the government, again, keeping the ownership public or collective.
So you have this structured system. Cooperative for the small, government-owned for the large and key. What's the ultimate goal of this specific ownership structure?
It's explicitly designed to eliminate the monopoly power of private capital, to ensure that the wealth generated by industrial production doesn't just accumulate in a few private hands, but is channeled directly back into either public welfare programs or distributed through the cooperative structures to the members. It keeps the benefits circulating.
Okay, so bringing this section together, this whole integrated model, the employment ratio, the decentralized industry, the ownership structures, it's designed to deliver on 6 core promises or focus points for the community.
Yes, the source summarizes the guarantees built into this justice-based welfare society. 1, 100% local employment through that balanced ratio. 2, maximum utilization of local resources for industrial development. 3, protection from dumping of cheaper, externally produced goods that could undermine local industry. 4, using the local language as the medium for education and all official work, strengthening cultural identity. 5, ensuring the local language is the main language for public contact. 6, an overall guaranteed local socioeconomic rights encompassing those minimum necessities and increasing purchasing power.
It really sounds like an integrated shield designed to protect and nurture the local socioeconomic unit against external exploitation and internal imbalance.
That's precisely the intention, self-reliance built on a foundation of guaranteed rights and local control.
Now, we're moving into territory that feels even more ambitious, more philosophical perhaps, challenging the very definition of economics itself.
Yes. If we're aiming for a truly progressive and, importantly, just society, the blueprint argues we have to move beyond the traditional definition of economics, the one largely inherited from Adam Smith economics as the science of wealth.
Right, that focus purely on material wealth accumulation. So what's the proposed alternative definition?
The source fundamentally reframes it. The true science of economics, it argues, should be focused on the cessation of suffering.
Cessation of suffering. Okay, that's a huge shift. What kinds of suffering are we talking about?
It identifies 3 distinct levels because human existence itself is seen as trifarious, having 3 aspects: physical, mental, and spiritual, so economics must address. 1, physical suffering. This is the most obvious: poverty, hunger, lack of shelter, disease, the things the people's economy limb directly targets. 2, mental suffering. This is increasingly recognized even in affluent societies, right? Stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness, the pain of broken relationships, a sense of meaninglessness. 3, spiritual suffering. This is described as the deepest level, that existential angst, the struggle to understand one's place in the universe, the search for ultimate meaning and connection.
Wow. So a truly developed economy, in this view, has to alleviate suffering on all 3 levels: body, mind, and spirit. It's radically different from just measuring GDP.
Radically different. It necessitates expanding economics beyond its traditional scope. Usually we think of the general economy managing resource allocation and the commercial economy managing trade and markets.
Right.
This blueprint adds 2 entirely new progressive limbs to create a quadri-dimensional economy.
4 dimensions. Okay, what are the 2 new ones?
They are the people's economy and the psycho-economy.
Let's start with the people's economy. What's its specific focus?
The people's economy is presented as the absolute, non-negotiable bedrock of the entire system. Its sole focus is on delivering those first 2 pillars we discussed, guaranteeing the minimum necessities of life for everyone and ensuring everyone has sufficient and ideally increasing purchasing capacity. It's about basic material security.
And structurally, to make that guarantee real, it requires those 2 massive transformations we touched upon earlier.
Yes, exactly. To secure the people's economy, the blueprint mandates: first, the socialization of land. Land shouldn't be a commodity for speculation by absentee landlords or distant corporations. It must be held and controlled by those actively engaged in using it: the farmers, the producers, the community.
Tying ownership to labor and stewardship.
Precisely. And second, the mandatory conversion of large industries into cooperative forms. This is crucial to prevent private monopolies from arising and concentrating wealth, which would undermine the goal of universal purchasing power.
And the source emphasizes this: people's economy has supreme priority.
Supreme priority over everything else, because until basic physical needs are met, until that physical suffering is addressed, any talk of higher mental or spiritual development is frankly meaningless for most people. You have to build the foundation first. Maslow's hierarchy, in a sense, but embedded in economic structure.
Okay, that makes sense. Build the foundation of physical security.
Yeah.
Which then sets the stage for the really futuristic element.
Yes.
The psychoeconomy.
Yes.
I find this concept incredibly interesting. It explicitly acknowledges that once basic livelihood problems are solved, the source even anticipates a future where people in highly developed economies might only need to work a few hours a week.
Right, automation handling much of the drudgery.
Exactly. Once that happens, the primary focus of the economy must shift. It has to pivot towards mental and spiritual growth and well-being.
Absolutely. The psychoeconomy is conceived as the science dedicated to providing what the source calls psychic nourishment to both the individual and the collective mind. It's about addressing the vacuum that can be created when purely material struggles are overcome. What do we do with our time and energy then?
And its purpose seems to be twofold. It starts with a kind of defensive posture, doesn't it? Countering exploitative tendencies.
Yes, and this is radical. Think about it. An actual branch of the economy dedicated to fighting practices that mentally weaken individuals.
How does it propose to do that?
It involves actively making the public aware of how, in the current system, capitalists seeking perpetual growth and profit often work to create artificial desires. They try to, and again, this is a direct quote, poison the mentality.
Artificial desires. Like what?
Yeah.
Give us some examples.
Well, think about the constant churn of fast fashion, designed to make you feel out of style after just a few wears. Or planned obsolescence in technology, where your perfectly good phone is made to feel inadequate by the next model. Or even the way social media algorithms can be engineered to foster comparison, envy, and discontent.
Keeping people perpetually dissatisfied so they keep consuming.
Exactly. These are seen as inhuman economic practices that exploit human psychology for profit. The psychoeconomy's first job is to expose these mechanisms and help people resist them, to fight this mental poisoning.
That's a huge insight, isn't it? The current system doesn't just exploit your labor, it actively tries to exploit your mind, manufacturing perpetual dissatisfaction. Even if we solve basic needs, if people are still mentally trapped in that cycle of comparison and manufactured desire, have we really achieved liberation?
Precisely the question the psychoeconomy raises.
Right.
And that leads directly to its second, more positive function, the development of psychic nourishment and creativity.
Okay, so after defending the mind, we move to actively nourishing it.
Yes. Once that defensive battle against manufactured desire starts being won, the goal becomes the maximum utilization and development of human mental and spiritual capacities, fostering genuine creativity, promoting introspection and self-reflection, helping people find deeper meaning, and crucially, securing mental balance.
Mental balance. The sources even reference a specific state described in the Bhagavad Gita, don't they?
They do. It's the state described as dukkhu anudvigna mana sukhi vigataspa.
Okay, let's unpack that for our listeners. It's a profound concept. What does it mean?
It translates roughly to one whose mind is not disturbed in adversity and who is free from craving for pleasure.
Wow. Undisturbed by hardship, free from desperately chasing highs. That sounds like true mental freedom.
It's presented as the highest form of mental equilibrium. And achieving that state, or at least creating the societal conditions that make it possible for more people to approach it, is the ultimate goal of the psychoeconomy. To create an environment where, because physical needs are met and the mind is actively nourished and protected from exploitation, true intellectual and spiritual elevation becomes possible. Not just for a few individuals, but for the collective consciousness of society.
Okay, so we have this incredibly ambitious framework, the 4 pillars, the balanced economy, the quadri-dimensional view, including psychoeconomy. Now, let's get back down to the ground level. How does this actually function autonomously, day to day, in a local community?
Right, the practical nuts and bolts. The blueprint provides 2 core mechanisms that make economic democracy work locally: integrated cooperation and integrated farming.
Cooperation, that sounds familiar. We have cooperatives now. But the source makes a distinction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Between integrated and dependent cooperation.
Yes, a very important distinction. Much of what passes for cooperation today, the source argues, is actually dependent cooperation. Smaller entities or individuals are often subservient to a larger, sometimes politically influenced body. This can lead to distortions, inefficiencies, even erode the moral fabric if power isn't truly shared.
So what's different about integrated cooperation?
Integrated cooperation is fundamentally based on equal rights, genuine mutual respect, and a shared commitment to collective welfare among people who are considered free and equal partners. It's designed to create permanent unity and shared purpose within the society, not just a functional arrangement. Everyone has a real stake and a real voice.
Okay, the need for this integrated model becomes really clear when you look at a common problem. The source highlights the distress sale. Can you sort of paint a picture of that for us? It's a narrative we see playing out across the globe, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Imagine a small farmer, let's say in a village in a developing country. They've worked hard, maybe taken out a loan for seeds and fertilizer, and they've managed to grow a beautiful, bountiful crop. Harvest time comes.
A moment of success, you'd think.
You'd think. But immediately they are under immense pressure. They need cash right now. They have to pay back that loan, often at high interest. They need to pay wages to anyone who helped with the harvest. They need to buy food and other necessities for their own family until the next harvest.
But they're desperate for immediate cash flow.
Desperate. And because they're desperate, they're forced to sell their entire harvest, maybe minus a small portion for their family immediately. To whom? Usually a middleman, a moneylender, or a large buyer who knows the farmer is desperate. And what happens?
We get a terrible price.
Exactly. A price significantly lower than the actual market value of the produce later in the season. They are exploited purely because they lack the financial power, the holding capacity to wait for a better price. That's the distress sale. It traps farmers in poverty.
And the cooperative system, specifically integrated cooperation, is designed as the direct cure for this vulnerability.
Precisely. Under an integrated cooperative system, the process is totally different. The moment the farmer harvests, the first thing they do is secure their own family's food supply for the year from their share of the land. No question about that.
Okay, basic needs met first.
Absolutely. Then, the remainder of the marketable produce is handed over to the local cooperative society. Now, this cooperative isn't just one desperate farmer. It has the collective financial strength of the entire community behind it.
So it has holding power?
It has holding power. The cooperative stores the produce safely. It monitors the market. It waits until the price is fair and advantageous before selling. Furthermore, the cooperative society handles all the complex stuff, collective taxes, any duties, arranging transportation, negotiating with larger buyers. It lifts that huge administrative and financial burden off the individual farmer.
Right, and the outcome for the farmer.
The profit generated from that fair collective sale is then returned directly to the farmer as a dividend, usually proportional to the amount of land they farm within the cooperative and the produce they contributed.
So it systematically breaks that cycle of debt and exploitation.
It breaks the cycle. It abolishes the financial pressure that leads to the distress sale. And it dramatically increases the farmer's actual income and purchasing power, directly fulfilling Pillar 2 of economic democracy, that guarantee of increasing purchasing power.
This whole system seems predicated on fundamentally elevating the status of agriculture itself. The source has a really powerful quote on this.
Yes, it's quite visionary. Because food is the most essential commodity, agriculture is the most important part of the economy and should have the same status as industry, including wage rate.
Agriculture is the principal industry, not just something peasants do.
That's a fundamental shift in valuation, isn't it? By treating agriculture with the same importance, the same status as manufacturing or tech, it implies it should attract the same level of investment, the same focus on infrastructure development, the same kind of skilled labor, and crucially, comparable wages.
And this leads to the concept of integrated farming. It's not just about growing crops anymore, is it?
No, it's a holistic approach. The idea of integrated farming is to connect all the essential components needed by humans back to the agricultural base, creating a self-sufficient cycle for overall development.
So what does integrated farming actually look like on the ground? What are the components beyond just standard crops?
It's designed to be comprehensive and cyclical. Yes, it starts with standard crops, grains, pulses, oil seeds, but also fruits, vegetables, flowers, vital medicinal plants. Then it seamlessly integrates animal husbandry, dairy farming for milk and manure, beekeeping for honey and pollination, fisheries in local ponds or water bodies, maybe sericulture for silk production.
So diversifying the agricultural output significantly.
Hugely. But it also requires developing the essential supporting infrastructure, all managed cooperatively. Things like efficient water conservation and irrigation systems. Remember, irrigation was a basic necessity. Also, scientific soil management and conservation, development and production of high-quality local seeds, organic pest control methods. It's about creating a resilient and productive agro-ecosystem.
Okay, so you've got this diverse range of high-quality agricultural outputs. What's the final piece of the local puzzle to ensure self-reliance?
The final piece is the tight integration of cottage industries right there within the community.
To process these goods locally.
Exactly. The immediate goal is to establish local industries, often small-scale, cooperative ones that can convert every farm good into finished consumer materials right there. Processing food, obviously, weaving cloth from locally grown cotton or silk or wool, producing local building materials from timber or earth for housing, even manufacturing basic things like paper from agricultural waste or ink for local education materials.
So instead of exporting raw materials cheap and importing finished goods expensive.
You produce and consume your basic necessities, food, clothing, shelter, education materials as much as possible locally. This creates more local jobs, retains wealth, dramatically increases self-reliance, and eliminates the ability of external entities to profit from draining wealth on the most basic human needs.
And freeing up that mental energy, as you said, for those higher pursuits outlined in the psychoeconomy.
That's the connection. Economic self-sufficiency creates the space for mental and spiritual development.
All right, we've covered the economic mechanics, the structure, the ratios, the cooperative models.
Yeah.
But the blueprint recognizes that economics doesn't happen in a vacuum. It addresses crucial socio-cultural factors needed for this system to actually thrive, starting with something often overlooked in economic plans. Language.
Yes, and this is presented as a critical point. The source argues there's a deep, almost inseparable relationship between a person's mother tongue, their socioeconomic progress, and even their fundamental life force.
That sounds quite profound. How does that connection work?
The argument is this. If education, official communication, business, if everything important in your public life is constantly forced upon you in a foreign language, one that isn't the language of your heart, your culture, your home, it inevitably induces what the source calls an inferiority complex. It creates a kind of mental crisis. People feel alienated, disconnected, their own cultural confidence is undermined.
And that impacts their ability to participate economically.
Directly. The source argues it weakens their moral strength, their capacity to resist exploitation. If you don't feel confident expressing yourself, if you feel hesitant or less than because you're operating in a language that isn't truly yours, you become less capable of asserting your rights, demanding fair treatment, organizing effectively within those cooperative structures we talked about.
So you become more susceptible to that web of exploitation.
Exactly. Therefore, the protection and active promotion of the mother tongue, using it in schools, in government, in local business, is presented as the very first condition for securing cultural identity, building collective confidence, and ultimately enabling successful, self-determined economic progress.
It's like a key defense mechanism for the psychoeconomy as well, protecting that mental well-being.
A very practical part of it, yes. Protecting the linguistic foundation of the community.
Okay. Moving from culture to financial structure. The blueprint includes another incredibly bold proposal, one designed to tackle head-on one of the biggest sources of corruption, opacity, and inefficiency in modern economies.
Yes, this one is bound to raise eyebrows. It's the proposal to completely abolish income tax.
Abolish income tax entirely. Wow. Okay. What's the proposed replacement? How does the system fund itself?
It's proposed to replace the entire complex, often loophole-ridden income tax system with a single, simple, transparent tax. A 10% tax levied directly on taxable production and products at the point of sale or production.
10% on production and products. Okay, abolish income tax. I mean, again, the immediate reaction is, that's radical. Wouldn't that just instantly destroy the funding capacity for all the things central governments do? You know, national infrastructure, defense, administration, research, things that might still be needed beyond the purely local level. How can a 10% production tax possibly recoup all that lost revenue from income and corporate taxes?
The rationale presented is both mathematical and psychological. Let's break it down.
Please do.
First, a tax on production or sale is generally much simpler to calculate, harder to hide, and more transparent than income tax. Income can be hidden through complex accounting, offshore accounts, undeclared work. Taxing the actual product or the output is more direct.
Easier to track the flow of goods than the flow of income.
Arguably, yes. But the psychological aspect is key. By removing income tax, you remove the primary incentive for people and businesses to keep money hidden, to create black money. Why go to all the effort of hiding income if income itself isn't taxed?
So the idea is that wealth naturally becomes more transparent.
Exactly. All wealth, all assets, the source claims, would effectively become transparent or white because there's no systemic advantage to hiding it anymore. This transparency is expected to lead to a massive increase in recorded, legitimate business transactions.
More open economic activity.
Yes, and that increased and transparent commerce, combined with the fact that wealth is being retained locally due to the closed stock market and cooperative reinvestment, is projected to actually strengthen business overall, encourage more investment in local employment institutions because transparent investment is safer and easier, and ultimately generate more net tax revenue through the simple 10% production tax than the complicated, easily exploitable income tax system ever could.
So it's swamping complexity and evasion for simplicity and transparency, hoping the volume makes up for the lower rate on a broader base.
That seems to be the core argument. Radical simplification aimed at radical accountability and increased legitimate activity.
Okay. But even with transparent structures and clear rules, no blueprint, no matter how brilliantly designed, can succeed if the people implementing it are susceptible to corruption or lack the moral compass to resist manipulating the system for personal gain. This brings us inevitably to the question of leadership.
Yes, and the sources are quite critical of what they see in many current democratic practices. Things like cunning politicians exploiting low public awareness or moral standards, using money or influence to buy votes, making empty promises, and generally manipulating the system for power.
So the solution isn't just more voting, or even just standard literacy.
No. The source emphasizes the need for real education. Not just technical skills or rote learning, but education that leads to genuine self-awareness. Education that helps people answer the fundamental questions. Who am I? What is my purpose? What should I do? Education that builds moral character.
And this need for moral grounding leads to the ultimate solution proposed for ensuring the system works as intended: the necessity of a specific kind of leadership. It's termed a liberal and benevolent leadership, sometimes even using the phrase benevolent dictatorship. Now, we absolutely have to frame this term very, very carefully for our listeners. It carries a lot of negative historical baggage.
Absolutely. It's crucial to understand this term within the specific philosophical context of the entire blueprint. It is explicitly not about advocating for political authoritarianism in the conventional sense, or the suppression of rights, or rule by force.
So what does it mean in this context?
It refers to the need for establishing a leadership structure, or perhaps better termed, a guiding body, that is equipped with profound moral and spiritual consciousness. A leadership whose primary motivation is the genuine welfare of all, not personal power or gain. The idea is that implementing such a complex, progressive vision successfully and preventing it from being subtly corrupted or exploited over time requires guidance from individuals who are unimpeachably committed to justice and collective well-being.
Okay, so less dictator in the political sense, more like highly competent, morally grounded guidance.
Precisely. Guidance that can ensure the plans are implemented faithfully and effectively. The ideal form of this leadership or guidance is embodied in the concept of the Sadvipra.
Sadvipra. What defines a Sadvipra leader according to this source?
A Sadvipra is defined by possessing a combination of 3 essential qualities, developed to a high degree. They must be physically healthy and capable, mentally developed, meaning highly intelligent, rational, and knowledgeable, and crucially, spiritually elevated, possessing a deep moral compass, universal outlook, and a commitment to service.
So it's not about a particular political party or a hereditary class.
Not at all. It's presented as an organizational class, a group of individuals recognized for their combined intellectual, moral, and spiritual advancement. People whose vision extends beyond narrow self-interest or group interest to the welfare of all beings.
And the argument is that without this kind of strong, visionary, and fundamentally moral leadership or guidance,
even the best-laid plans, the most perfect economic blueprints, will ultimately remain limited to paper, or worse, they'll be twisted and exploited by those driven primarily by selfish desires. This Sadvipra leadership, this moral vanguard, is seen as the necessary element to ensure the entire economic and social structure truly serves the people and facilitates that higher goal of physical, mental, and spiritual liberation, preventing the reemergence of exploitation.
It places a huge emphasis on the character and consciousness of those in positions of responsibility.
An absolute emphasis. The structure is important, but the consciousness implementing it is paramount. #episode conclusion, a call to action for a just society.
Well, we have certainly journeyed through an incredibly expansive, detailed, and I think genuinely ambitious blueprint today. It covers so much ground.
It really does, from the deep philosophical underpinnings to the very practical mechanics of local economies.
And if we bring it right back down to the community level, to that focus on, say, village upliftment, which is so critical in many parts of the world, we can really see those 3 integrated cornerstones holding it all together, can't we?
Absolutely. It boils down to integrated cooperation, ensuring people work together fairly and effectively, integrated farming, making agriculture the strong, diversified, and respected base, and overarching everything, the constitutional guarantee of economic democracy, securing those basic rights and local control.
And the source argues that when these 3 elements are properly established and secured, a truly just, prosperous, and self-reliant human society isn't just a dream. It's almost inevitable.
Yes, the potential is presented as inherent in the structure. And crucially, the sources aren't just abstract about the goals. They lay out extremely tangible, practical demands that must be enshrined to achieve this all-round upliftment. These really show it's intended as a workable path forward.
Let's reiterate those key takeaways for the listener, the concrete demands that form the foundation.
Right. The demands include things like free education for everyone, right up to the highest possible degree. Guaranteed employment for all youth within their local area. Guaranteed irrigation facilities for all farmers, that vital input. And providing essential food items, the basics, like rice, pulses, flour, at rates even cheaper than current subsidized ration rates, specifically for all laborers, ensuring no one goes hungry despite working.
These really are the cornerstones of self-reliance, aren't they? They ensure development happens not just quickly, but on a solid, equitable foundation where everyone benefits. And this whole approach, this progressive utilization theory, or PROUT, pronounced PROUT,
That's right.
it's designed specifically to empower local areas, particularly rural ones, to advance towards sustainable prosperity and progress, driven from within.
And the ultimate vision, stepping back again, it suggests a future where progress isn't measured just by GDP figures or billionaire counts, but by the actual level of freedom from suffering, physical, mental, and spiritual, that all people enjoy.
That golden sparrow analogy comes back, doesn't it? The idea that transformation is possible. That if these principles are adopted, guided by that necessary moral leadership and collective consciousness,
Then society can indeed be transformed. The goal isn't just economic security, though that's the essential foundation. The ultimate aim is to prepare a suitable base, a fertile ground, for widespread intellectual and spiritual development, once that basic security is universally achieved for everyone.
this entire blueprint, this deep dive we've taken, it offers more than just critique. It offers, I think, a genuine sense of optimism, providing detailed structural answers in areas where many current systems seem to only generate more questions and increasing inequality.
It's certainly a comprehensive alternative vision.
And if you, listening to this, found this discussion insightful, if you feel this kind of blueprint for a more equitable and just world deserves more attention, more development, more dissemination, well, we want to make a direct appeal to you now.
Please recommend and subscribe to Sadvipra's channel. Help keep this conversation going, help explore these ideas further. Your support helps in the effort to keep the world moving towards becoming a better place for all to live in a just and happy society.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into what a progressive future could look like. We really hope this blueprint gives you not just information, but a tangible vision, something hopeful to consider about how a truly self-reliant and equitable world might actually be built.
Thank you. We'll catch you next time for another exploration.